Good day and welcome to today's webinar, Building a Continuous Testing Pipeline Using HPE LeanFT. This presentation is being brought to you by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and through Vivit webinar sponsorship. And all of this webinar will be available in this recording after this session. My name is Chris Trimper. I'll be your moderator. I'm the manager of QA Engineering at Independent Health in Western New York. I'm also the local Vivit chapter leader for the Western New York chapter, and I'm a leader on the Performance Engineering SIG for Vivit. Today we have three great speakers. We have Amir Bennett. He is the HPE Senior Product Manager. He has over a dozen years of experience with Mercury Interactive in the field of quality assurance, software testing, and automation. He's the product manager in charge for Unified Functional Tester, which is previously the QTP product, and he's the creator and owner of LeanFT, HPE's latest and greatest in the automation suite. We also joined by Aviad Diamant. He is the QA team lead at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. He has extensive experience and management skills in the software quality world. As a QA engineer and team leader, his principal areas of expertise include quality assurance methodologies and tools, agile transformations, and DevOps. And he's held a position on the LeanFT team for the last few years. We're also joined by Andrew Tennant. He's a senior automation engineer at Sky UK. He's had over 26 years of experience in automating tests for hardware and software products in large multinational organizations. He's currently working as a technical lead with the role of determining the tools and directions of the automation team responsible for ensuring quality delivery of Sky's CRM systems. Just a couple of quick housekeeping slides. This is a live session that is being recorded. In the upper right of the presentation pane, if you want to make the presentation full screen, there's a little square there that you can enlarge it for. And this presentation is available to all Vivit members and shareable to any Vivit members. There's a quick thing on the side, the control panel. There's a Q&A window where you can ask questions, and you may even choose the language in which you wish to ask your questions in just by clicking on the flag. So throughout the presentation, feel free to ask questions, and we will have a few minutes towards the end for live Q&A to go through those questions. So let's get started. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Bennett. Thank you, and everyone have a great webinar.
Thank you, Chris, for this excellent introduction. So as Chris mentioned, today we're joining in order to go over a few of the most important things that occurred in the last year as part of the latest release of LeanFT, which is LeanFT 14. We only announced it last week, so I would like to spend around 10 minutes to briefly go over some of the core competence that this release brings. However, the vast majority of today's session is going to be spent on continuous testing and how LeanFT is a core asset as you're doing continuous testing. And for that reason, we invited both Aviad, who is our QA manager, who is actually using LeanFT inside his team in order to actually test both LeanFT and, again, to make sure that it is meeting all of the enterprise readiness requirements. We also have Andrew, who will speak a lot about what is the role LeanFT plays in his organization and to see how it is a kind of a very strategical aspect as they're doing continuous integration and continuous testing. So this is going to be the vast majority of today's call. And as Chris mentioned, I encourage you to write your question in the Q&A section, and we will answer them partly by writing the answers, but also we will spend actually more than 5 minutes because from our perspective we can stay longer. So we will have around 15 minutes in the end of this session. So let's talk a little bit about version 14. And the first thing that I would like to mention is a little bit about the name change that we did in the Uft portfolio or in the Uft product lines. So as you can see here, the first edition as part of Uft is actually going to be Uft Pro, which is LeanFT as you are familiar with it today. Okay, so this rename to Uft Pro, in brackets you will also see the name LeanFT always there, is to bring the LeanFT under the Uft umbrella. And we're not only enhancing by that the Uft brand equity, but we are also tightening the connection between the two and reinforcing the common goal they serve, which is to enhance the software test automation. While one product, which is LeanFT, completes the other product, Uft. But the LeanFT heritage is not going away, so you will still see it quite often, both in the product, documentation, and etc. So you can consider this kind of a name change of more of making sure that everyone aware that this is part of the same problem space. In the Uft Enterprise, this is basically the Uft that you are familiar with today. The only thing there is that we added Sprinter to the mix. So if you are not familiar with Sprinter, this is the market leader solution in the manual and exploratory testing. So now everyone that either has or planning to buy Uft concurrent license will also be entitled to the Sprinter solution. And the last addition here is the Uft Ultimate, and this is something that is suitable to anyone that would like to have end-to-end testing, also covering mobile center, or actually mobile testing. So with this Ultimate Edition, you're getting everything that you need, including also BPT, business process testing, in order for you to take advantage of all the functional testing tools while you're doing testing, again, across the board, including the mobile space. The upgrade path from one edition to the other. So, for example, if you are currently the owner of Uft, which means that you are a Uft Enterprise user, you are able to upgrade your SKUs to Uft Ultimate, and by that to get access also to testing your mobile devices. I forgot to mention that Uft Ultimate, every piece that you see here as part of this bundle, it's one-to-one. So by buying Uft Ultimate, you're getting one Uft Enterprise, one BPT, one mobile center. And by that, I would like to make sure that everyone is aware that we are not forcing a migration here. So if you have old licenses of QTP or functional testing, they will still be available as part of version 14, meaning we will support it, but you will only get a subset of the functionality. We also extended the time for the evaluation period. So it was 30 days. Now you have 60 days to evaluate either Uft or Uft Pro, meaning LeanFT. So especially for the ones in the session that are not still using LeanFT, I really encourage you to take advantage of this extended evaluation period. And the last thing is that we released in the previous version 12.5, the Runtime Engine or the Runtime License. Now it allows you to execute either Uft or LeanFT scripts. So by actually spending half the price comparing to the Uft Enterprise concurrent license, you're able to buy just the Runtime Engine. And as I mentioned, this engine allows you to execute either Uft or the Uft Pro, which is LeanFT. Let's talk a little bit more about what else is new. And I started with operational, so let's finish with that. So in the operational theme, we're talking also about parallel execution. So you are able to do parallel execution not only on web, but also on mobile, to have up to 4 tests executed on the same time, on the same machine, while using the same license. So a great, let's say, money saver, and also making sure that you're taking advantage to the full out of your licenses and out of your hardware. In the miscellaneous column, you can see that we are supporting additional technology. So this is the 6th technology that LeanFT can support, terminal emulators. So wherever you have a green screen kind of application, point of sale and things of that nature, you're able to use, like you were able to do it with Uft, now also with LeanFT. And the more Two more important things from my perspective is the cross-platform. So for the first time, we are able to install and use our products not only on Windows, but also on Mac and Linux to provide you the freedom to choose whatever environment that best suits your needs to use our products. So this is relevant only for LeanFT, right, and not to Uft. And as I mentioned, this is currently only providing a subset of the technologies. In this case, it's only web and mobile when you are working on Mac and Linux. Of course, it's only we had to select a specific distribution and a specific version for each, and this information can be found in our product availability metrics. Last theme here is the LeanFT for Selenium, and this is something that we created in order to harness the powerful toolset and capabilities that LeanFT has to offer without sacrificing what you are already familiar with or fond of, which is might be the Selenium syntax and SDK. So now we're not telling you that you need to move to start to learn the LeanFT syntax. You can continue using Selenium, but you will get a lot of, again, toolset and capabilities that were not available to you up until now. And we will talk about it a little bit more in the next slide. Again, this session is not going to cover what I'm talking about right now, but I just wanted to give you the gist. So if this is something that you found valuable, you can read more either in the online help that we have or the blog that I posted a couple of days ago. Sorry for that. So this is the link for the blog. As Chris mentioned, you will get this deck, so don't hurry and write it down. You will get it and you can look at it later on. So let's skip regarding the Mac and Linux. I can just tell you that in a nutshell, this is very similar to how it looks in Windows. So you have there basically all the rich toolset that we are providing with Windows. The only big difference that you will see in the UI is with the OIC, the Object Identification Center. That looks actually cooler. We redesigned it in order to fit, to take advantage of what Mac can provide. So I think that you will really like the new UI here and the usability that it provides. But other from that, as I mentioned, it is very similar to the Windows experience that you had. It still supports a parallel execution, of course. The packaging is a standalone package for either Mac or Linux, so you don't need to install the Windows installation for that. It is much linear. And licensing and license consumption is, again, is the case with Windows machines. Let's move and talk a little bit about the LeanFT for Selenium. The goal here is to provide, again, to the existing Selenium users ability to have an easier creation and maintenance, and by that to have a better and a more robust tests that are created in the end. And I'm talking about Selenium tests, okay? So they're not a LeanFT test, but they are continuing to be Selenium tests that can be executed with the WebDriver, the Selenium WebDriver. Some of the capabilities or features that are coming with this solution. So first of all is the templates that we are providing you. And these templates save you a lot of time when you want to basically to get everything that is needed in order to create a Selenium test. We are bringing everything, including also the libraries that are relevant for the LeanFT for Selenium. We enhanced the APIs that Selenium provides and added more locators that you can use to really boost the ability and the visibility of what are the DOM elements or attributes that are associated to each utility, to each object. And by that you have ability to more intimately understand what are the relevant attributes for each object, select the ones that are uniquely identifying this object, and also have a better or more robust test in the end. We also provided additional utilities, for example, the ability to highlight or to take a snapshot of specific areas in the screens. And the most important thing here is the Object Identification Center that you are all familiar with, that also supports now Selenium and the locators that I mentioned before, both the Selenium one and the ones that we added on top of it. Again, this is a dedicated packages that is part of the LeanFT package, so it's just another flavor that you can basically choose from. And there is a great blog post that we wrote just on how to take advantage of the feature set that is part of the LeanFT for Selenium, and you have the link here. It is important to mention that this is the first release that we are providing this theme, and we are, of course, planning to continue in investing in this theme moving forward. For that purpose, we created a public distribution list. You can see the email here, and we encourage the community to send us feedbacks, requests, and things of that nature, so we will be able to provide more value as we move forward with this agenda. And with that, again, this was not the purpose of this call, so I just stole actually, I see 12 minutes out of your time. And I would like to actually to move forward and to give Andrew, who is our, to give Aviad, who is our QA manager, the opportunity to explain how LeanFT is being used in-house, both in his organization, but also internally inside HPE software, in order to really demonstrate what are the tasks that are being used in order to validate LeanFT, and also how it takes part in the entire ecosystem while we're doing continuous integration and continuous testing. So, Aviad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amir. Hi, everyone. I'm Aviad. As Amir said, I'm leading the LeanFT QA team, and I'll be taking you on a journey into testing and using LeanFT, or in other words, how to get from Earth to Pluto in less than a year. So when we sat down about 2 years ago, the time the QA team was being forged, and we started planning LeanFT testing, we found that planning a testing suite for an automation tool is not that simple. The first aspect we were talking about testing is the LeanFT SDK. Our SDK supported, at the time, 8 different technologies. It took us about 3 minutes to understand that it wasn't just 8 technologies. Web technology has, or had, several web browsers that we needed to support, and each cycle of our test suite needed to run on these browsers. Mobile support is 3 types of operating systems, and each of them has native, hybrid, and web applications, which we needed to identify and then replay on. Java technology is not just one UI technology, but all the permutations inside it. And each and every technologies of the technology that we supported had these different permutations inside it. So being an automation tool, automation wasn't really a question. At the time, NASA Curiosity rover was sending great photos from Mars. This is its first selfie ever was sent from Mars. So the first project was named Mars, and we were on our way. We started to write code, tons of code, to cover all these technologies in C#, Java, and later on, we added JavaScript SDK as well. And in order to certify operating systems that we needed to verify LeanFT works on, we executed all these tests on different Windows versions. We needed to get coverage, and as soon as possible. It took us about 2 weeks to see that coverage wasn't our only problem. First, covering all the actions that LeanFT allows the user to do would be more than 20,000 tests. That's a lot to write. Secondly, coverage is not enough. Like any other project, we needed to think about maintenance as well, and maintaining this amount of code would be almost impossible. We understood we needed a more of a script once solution, which will allow us to write one test and execute on many applications. Let's take, for example, the simplest action that can be done on a button, the click. We wanted to write one test to execute button click action and run the same test on different applications and different technologies. Then we would verify that the click was done. As all applications behave the same, the validation would be the same, and we're supposed to be good. In order to have this, we had to write an application to verify. We had to write all these applications to verify the LeanFT capabilities on in all the supported technologies and permutations. These applications would have been would have the exact same flows and the same use cases. Only then we can run the one-click test, and it could be valid. The application project, being the next star, was named Jupyter. We wrote a customer-like application with all the functionalities that we can think of, first in web and mobile. And then we added the other technologies that LeanFT supports as well. We then wrote one big framework to enable one test with one object to run on the different applications. On top of all of these tests, to verify all the actions, every bit and piece of code that LeanFT has SDKs suggest, we created end-to-end tests on real applications like eBay, Slack, and WhatsApp, and many others. We will later talk about how we divided these suites to different pipelines in our CI, nightly, and regression cycle. Saturn was our next project for testing all the LeanFT tools, the Object Identification Center, the application model, and the report. Each of these tools had its own special twists. We won't go too deeply into the effort that was invested on each tool, but we will talk about one point. So the first one was the Object Identification Center. It basically displays all the attributes on all the web objects and other types of technologies when spied on different browsers, and the properties of all the other technology, and then gives the ability to generate code for unique identification of these objects in the 3 supported languages that we are aware of. Now, defining the KPI for this suite was quite easy. All the tests that were written in the Mars project would have need to run using the identification generated in Saturn. This is something that was quite easy to understand what we want to do, but later on we had challenges implementing it. The next thing would be writing the automation for the application model. So in this case, the automation tests were written before dev even wrote the code. This helps us a lot in the concept of done is done, with dev running automatic tests before they commit the code. This made dev much more aware of quality and what was being tested. The last tool that we're going to talk about is the LeanFT report. This report shows, as we all know, at the end of every test execution, a detailed information about each and every step that was done. This means we had to test for all the supported technologies, for all the actions that LeanFT supports, and in each testing framework that we work in, how these actions are going to be represented in the report. Saturn Automation was basically a big wrapper on top of Mars project. So every LeanFT action that was executed was verified in the report that was generated after the test. We've skipped Uranus, well, you can understand why, which got us to Neptune. By now, you can probably understand the amount of tests that we have for LeanFT, and now we can talk about execution. We use Jenkins as our automation execution. First, we thought about what was the operating system support metrics. As we supported, at the time we supported Windows 7, 8.1, and 10, and their corresponding server versions. And later on, we added the support in 3 Linux distributions with different desktop applications and Mac OS as well. And we had to prepare the environments of which the tests would be executed. Neptune project was basically setting up LeanFT automatic nightly deployment on all of these operating systems and running the nightly tests on them. Now we get to another part of Neptune, the pipelines. We decided to work with 3 different pipelines. First was testing as part of our CI. Every commit would run a small amount of basic tests, the sanity package, and this gives the developers indication of their code if their code changed something significant in the product. Every night, the second pipeline would run, and it's the nightly build. In this pipeline, the whole suite of end-to-end tests that we were talking about before on real customer applications is running. New features testing, defect verification, and other quality activities would be done by QA engineers only on these nightly builds. These builds give QA all the environment that they need to test on and verify on without handling installations at all. Now, the last one is the weekly pipeline, which in every weekend we rest and our computers don't. The suite contains all the replay tests, including report and integration tests, and everything is being executed. This cycle is about 25,000 tests and takes quite a while. We use the new ability of executing tests in parallel and run this suite on multiple machines in order to shorten this procedure. At the beginning of every week, a full report is generated showing what was executed and what's the quality status of our product. This is a small view. This is a small view of the Jenkins test jobs that are running every night on the nightly build. This is displayed on a big screen TV, so every person from the R&D team, the managers, developers, testers, DevOps, anyone can see at any time the status of the nightly build and the quality of the product. And this basically brings us to Pluto. So Pluto has a few concepts. One is the performance. There's an accelerating trend that performance testing, instead of being done with simple scripts, which the performance engineers create or generate, will be now done with functional testing scripts in real customer scenarios. And it actually makes sense. LeanFT scripts can run as part of many performance tools led by HPE's Load Runner and Storm Runner, which makes the testers' lives much easier, less scripts to maintain. They can use the functional tests as part of their performance suite as well. We have enhanced our applications to support performance testing as well and continue us executing LeanFT tests as part of the performance suite on them. Pluto which is the final step before breaking the solar system edges, is also a global HPE project. We now have more than 15 products inside HPE that use LeanFT as their automation tool. Among them are Load Runner and its web and mobile test generator TrueClient, ALM, Mobile Center Service Anywhere, Quality of Things applications, and even the HPE Jenkins plugin is being tested with LeanFT. Thank you all for listening. Now I'll hand it over to Andrew, who is a power user of LeanFT and can share a bit of his experience with implementing LeanFT as a centralized solution in his ecosystem. Andrew?
Thanks very much, Aviad. So my name is Andrew Tennant. I have spent almost all my career in the test automation arena, and I've tested in various areas of technology, including hardware, software development, and IT. And I've worked for various companies, including Hewlett-Packard, Agilent Technologies. I'm currently with Sky as a tech lead in the test automation team. And I'm going to talk today about how we have built a continuous test pipeline as part of our deliverable. So first off, just a quick overview of Sky and the product which we are developing in our section here. So Sky is a company which delivers products including pay TV, broadband, talk, mobile, and now TV. So we have about 22 million customers across 5 countries in Europe. That includes UK, Ireland, Italy, Germany, and Austria. In order to support these customers, we develop a customer relationship management system. And that system is used in a number of contact centers across the world in order to manage customer details, to manage their billing, to manage their subscriptions, to either add or remove subscriptions, to sell our products, to support any inquiries by our customers, and also for installations of our hardware into customer properties. Now, this CRM system, over the past couple of years, we have been implementing a migration of. So we've been going from an old world where it was implemented in a Java thick client, which we progressively added some embedded web pages to. And in a new world, we now use a web browser, and that web browser has an embedded Java applet. Now, over time, the functionality of that Java applet will be deprecated and move into the web browser itself. So in terms of building a CI pipeline, what were our objectives? So first of all, what we wanted to do was to provide our development teams with the ability to do self-service deployments. So they could press a button effectively and trigger up a deployment to an integration environment without any third-party involvement. After having done that and the deployment having taken place, then that would automatically trigger some automated regression tests, which the automation test team are wholly responsible for. On the completion of the execution of the test, then we wanted to be able to generate test reports from those test runs and email these out to an appropriate distribution list, part of which would be the person who did the original deployment. We then wanted to provide the capability of doing rapid results analysis. So when we got any failures in the test runs, we'd be able to do a diagnostic of those failures as fast as possible and report back on these failures to the development teams as appropriate. In implementing all this, we committed to the development teams an SLA of 30 minutes for a turnaround time from the point at which they raised the deployment request to getting results back from the regression tests with some idea of why we're getting failures. One of the key factors within this was to have an integration environment which is wholly owned by the test team, and where we could do testing which provided a gateway for releasing components into system test. So what was our test implementation? Well, we started developing a test framework about 2 or 3 years previous to implementing the CI pipeline. So we already had an established framework in there, which we used to do purely services testing, and we'd adopted a development process of BDD to do that, and we're using Cucumber. It was implemented in Java using Spring, and we have a number of test tools which we kind of adopted in order to do our test development. So for an IDE, we were using Eclipse. For version control, we originally used Subversion, but we have since migrated across to Git. We embedded in the test framework some unit testing, so we were using JUnit. I had a build management tool of Maven, and we were using a scheduler of Jenkins. At the time we started doing the CI pipeline, we were just starting to do UI testing of our web browser. And so at that time, when we started looking at that UI automation, we decided to adopt LeanFT for that. So why did we use LeanFT? LeanFT is targeted at continuous integration and continuous testing. So it was an obvious candidate for looking at for our purposes. It was also compatible with our existing test development environment, which we've just described. So all the components of that development environment fitted nicely with the adoption of LeanFT. That is the integration with Eclipse and working with Java. And one of the key factors for us was that it supports non-browser-based testing. So because we have this Java applet, using something like Selenium provided some obstacles for us. And we evaluated one or two tools to allow us to try and automate the testing of the web browser with the Java applet. But the best solution that we found to do that was LeanFT. And it also provides us with some simple-to-use features. We find the object identification of the object spy, something which is very helpful and useful. We use the application model. It's something which is shareable. We've got a team of 12 people currently working on a shared, several shared application models. It's got an intuitive user interface. So it's easy for our teams to navigate and find objects, and it is maintainable, so it's easy to change and update for changes in the user interface of the application. We also want to look at the potential for parallel execution. It's not something which we currently implement, but it's something which we see as a path which we will go down in the future. So let's look then at the delivery framework of our CI pipeline. As part of the self-service deployment, when the developer wants to perform a deployment, what he does is he raises a ticket in Jira. On raising that ticket in Jira, it triggers some Jenkins jobs. So there are various phases that it goes through. One is to get the versions, and then we run the various tests which we have. We produce reports of the back end of those tests. And we run all these Jenkins jobs on a state of about 30 Jenkins slaves, all of which have the Uft Runtime Engine installed on them. In order to store our data, we have a database which is Elasticsearch, essentially an unstructured database into which we put all our data. So when we get the versions that are deployed, we do that via the Jira request and put that into Elasticsearch. All the results and information that we generate during our test runs, we also push into the database. And we run our tests via a proxy in the application, so that all the service requests that get made from the user interface, these get logged in Elasticsearch. So all the service calls down the stack are available within the database. Once we complete the test runs, then we run a report job which does a pentaho transformation. And that, at the end of the job, will generate an email which goes out to the appropriate distribution list and also posts onto a Slack channel. Then, in order to provide us with some analysis of the results, we use another component of the Elk stack. So the Elk stack incorporates both Elasticsearch and Kibana. And Kibana is a third-party tool which we use. Kibana gives a visual representation of the data which is in Elasticsearch. We also use what we call an ATF tracker, which is an in-house tool in order to add some value on top of the raw results which we extract out of Elasticsearch. This is one of the Jenkins jobs which we have that is a kind of overview of the CI pipeline process. So each of the rows that you can see in here is a particular deployment. So as you can see from there, we get the deployment details, we perform the deployment, we check that the deployment is successful, we execute the tests, and then we do the test analysis. I'm now going to switch across and do a bit of a demo. So bear with me for a second. This is an example of a test report which gets emailed out to the distribution list. So here we can see all the information that is appropriate to a particular test run. At the top we have some summary details. It tells us the environment name, the date, the time the test took to run, and there's a quality index up here, which is an in-house metric we use just to give a measure of the quality of the deployment. Just down below that, we have details of the deployed components. So here we see there have been 2 components deployed, which have triggered off the execution of this run. It gives us the version numbers of the deployed components and the time at which these components were deployed. In the next section is a summary of the tests. Well, as I said earlier, we adopted a process of BDD. And in this test summary, you can see the rows corresponding to each of the feature files which we run or make up our test suites. And for each of these feature files, you will see the standard Cucumber test statuses, pass, fail, pending, and skipped. Each of these feature files has its own quality index associated with it, so you can get some more detail at that level of the quality of the deployment. The next section we have in here is to do with the environment, and part of the distribution list for this is to our environments teams, and they should be able to observe from some of the details in here whether there are any problems within the environment at the time of executing the tests. Then we come down to some of the more detailed aspects of the tests here. So this breaks down the features into the individual scenarios within the feature files. So I just want to skip down here to some particular failures that I've chosen this report specifically because it has some failures in it. And in this feature file called Customer View, we've got about a dozen different scenarios in here. And you can see we've got quite a number of failures in this feature. So from the report, we have a number of different links. So each of these columns in here really has a link to some dashboard or some detail where we can do some more detailed analysis of the failures. So if I click on the name of the scenario itself, this will take us off to a Kibana dashboard here, which shows us some more detailed information on the reasons for failure. So you can see that if you're familiar with Cucumber and the BDD implementation in Cucumber, the different steps within a Cucumber scenario. It shows you the status of each step, and it shows us where the test failed with the reason for the failure. And the failure in this particular instance here is a LeanFT exception indicating that it wasn't able to find an object on the user interface. So something has gone wrong, something has changed on the user interface here, and the tester will have to go away and investigate the reason for that failure. If I navigate back here to our report, then one of the other links in here is on this QDEX score. And if we open this up, then we can get a feel for the history of this specific test. So within this time window that actually comes up by default, which is the last week, we can see that there's a QDEX score of 10 on every run that we have done in the last week. I'm going to open this up to give us a view of the last 30 days. Hopefully this will refresh. And we can see here that on the 25th, 26th of January, we had some failures. The QDEX score dropped down to 2 point something. So we had a problem for a day or two around that point in time. And if I go back to the test report here, and I was to go up to the top of this report, you would see that that corresponds to the date on this report. I'll not navigate up to the top just now. So that failure in history corresponds with the results from this report here. And you can see the QDEX score for that scenario was 2.2, which aligns with the score at that time. So the other link that I want to show you from within here is on this Ajax call here. This takes us to another Kibana dashboard, which basically gives us a picture of all the service calls which have been executed down the stack when we ran the test. So you can see the detail on this. We've got the type of method which was called, either a get or a post or a put. We've got the URL of the request. And across on the right-hand side here, we have got the response code of that request and the response time. So if we have a failure, we're able to go in here because we can see every service request that was made as part of that test, and we can see whether any errors occurred in a particular service request, which might correspond to the failure which we had at that point in time. So that's the detail that we can get out of the test, and part of the analysis of this is to go into our ATF tracker, which, as I said previously, was an in-house developed tool which extracts the data from our test failures and which allows us to add some value onto the detail of the test results. So if I choose to amend an entry within our ETF tracker which corresponds to a particular failure, and then what we can do is we can, once we've investigated the failure, understood what the problem is, then we can categorize the failure to be either a data issue, a defect, a problem with the test itself, or a problem with the environment. There's an additional uncategorized option in there, which I don't think we use very often. So, having analysed our results and provided some added value by categorising the failures, then at the end of the day, from an overall management point of view, we can create a dashboard like you can see on your screens just now. So this is a visual representation of the overall test status and time, and you can see in the sections down here we've got top 10 failures by scenario, top 10 failures by step, and these donuts show us how these split up by defect or by test issue, by environment issue, or by who's investigated the problems. So this is ownership of the issues, or where the main issues, the top issues, have been found. So just as an example here, we can see that the majority of our failures have been raised as defects, 34 defects. We've had 5 test issues, and we've had 9 environment issues. Most of these issues have been in the feature file, which is portfolio view tests, and we've got 29 failures in our bill view tests. This gives us a very concise top-level view of our test failures and the history behind it. So, what did we manage to achieve then out of our initial objectives of delivering a CI pipeline? So we have managed to deliver, and we are delivering a service to the development teams to verify the quality of a component released to integration in a guaranteed turnaround time of 30 minutes. We implemented a fully automated process from the triggering of a deployment to the delivery of detailed integration test results. We managed to integrate all relevant data from a single execution of the process to allow us to do rapid analysis and categorization of failures to the point of raising defects where appropriate. And we don't just generate, as I've demonstrated to you just now, the execution of a single set of tests and a single test report. We actually now run multiple parallel test suites, each delivering different reports to different stakeholders. These are aligned by product and or test methodology. So that concludes my presentation of how we have implemented a continuous integration pipeline. I hope you find that useful. So thank you, and I shall just return you to our host.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It was very interesting. Guys, I still encourage you to open and ask a question, either Andrew, myself, or Aviad. We already have quite a lot of questions, but if you have a specific question, again, for Andrew regarding what you just saw, go ahead and post them. Chris, do you want to moderate the Q&A?
Yeah, let's get into that. And Andrew, Amir, and Aviad, thanks. This has been great so far. One of our first questions is, I believe, for Andrew. And I believe this question came up when you were reviewing I believe it was the emailed summary report. An individual was asking where the coverage percentage is coming from in your results.
So the coverage percentages, when we implement feature files, we have tests which potentially skip, or we can make them as pending, throw pending exceptions, so they're still pending tests. And the coverage statistics come from the fact that a number of our tests have executed and produced a result, but that's out of an overall set of test results, which might also have script or have pending steps in them. So that the entire set of tests, including which are not yet complete or which have not run, will be the full set of tests, and they would indicate 100% coverage if they execute it and when they execute.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next question asks, and some of these questions I will say have been answered publicly in chat, but we want to go over a couple of them just so that everyone gets a chance to really hear about the answers. So this next question asks, are there any courses or materials to help ramp up individuals who are new to LeanFT?
Yeah, I will take this one. So first, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the new tutorial that we added in our online help. So anyone that is either a newcomer who wants to make sure that he's taking advantage of the most important things out of LeanFT, I strongly encourage you to go over this tutorial. Besides that, there is a 2-day course that is available. It does have some costs associated to it because we're talking about a trainer that can either come to your site or do it virtually. So this is a 2-day course, and there is a lot of material that we are uploading either in YouTube or in the help files to allow you to better ramp up on LeanFT. If there is anything that is missing, again, you have the PDL that I posted before. You could contact us through there or directly to me as you see fit.
Oh, that's great. And I've used that online help quite a bit. In fact, I got a bunch of my licensing answers from there as well. It was pretty detailed. Our next question is in regarding to Selenium and LeanFT. It says, in Selenium for LeanFT, there wasn't mention of application models, and I think this person's asking, are application models applicable for the Selenium and LeanFT?
Great question. So, as I mentioned, the LeanFT for Selenium is currently at the technology preview, meaning that we are aware that there are a few gaps that you might find very valuable, the features themselves valuable in the LeanFT that are yet to be part of the LeanFT for Selenium. One example of this is the application models, something that will allow you to do better reusability of the assets and easier maintenance as you're doing your automation. So this is currently a gap that we are working on closing very shortly. Same goes for the report, by the way. So the report that we have in LeanFT still do not support the LeanFT for Selenium. But other from that, all the, let's say, main features, including the OIC, as I mentioned before, the Object Identification Center, more utilities, more locators, an easy kind of a template that you can use are part of the LeanFT for Selenium already today.
Oh, great. Thanks for that info. This next question is about Sprinter. It asks, does Sprinter require ALM or Quality Center connectivity?
So we give you the choice to either, if you have an ALM or a QC, then you are entitled to Sprinter, and you will continue to be able to use this kind of integration in the future, so nothing is changed of that matter. What we did is for the customers that do not have a QC or an ALM license or an instance, we enable them also to take advantage of Sprinter free of charge, meaning that everyone that has a Uft license, again, only the concurrent license, will be able to install Sprinter and to use whatever defect tracking system that he has, like Bugzilla or Jira, and to connect and store his assets directly in his file repository. So again, this is something that actually do not consume your Uft license. So we are just checking that you have a Uft license, and if the answer is yes, you are able to start working with Sprinter without consuming this license. So it doesn't require anymore the instance of ALM or the license of ALM to use Sprinter.
Oh, that's great. And then would they get Sprinter with the CD or the download of UFT 14, or is it available somewhere else?
So we don't provide CDs for more than 2 years, I think, so everything is digital now. And the Sprinter binaries are located in HPLN. One of them, at least one of the installation can be found in HPLN, but I think there are other places that you can download the Sprinter. For example, if you're logging into your SSO, to the HPE SSO, I think you can also find it there.
Cool. All right, on to the next question. It asks, will LeanFT be available separately without UFT?
Yeah, so it's already from day one, LeanFT is also available as a standalone. So the only reason why we gave it also for the UFT install base free of charge is to make sure that the adoption will be easier and faster. But it has a standalone installation and a license in order for you to take exactly what you need and to buy in a reduced price the LeanFT, comparing to, actually now we need to start calling it the UFT Pro LeanFT, which is offered in almost half the price comparing to the UFT Enterprise. So definitely, if you are not familiar with that, there is go and search, just do a Google search for LeanFT evaluation or LeanFT buy, and you will be directed to our SaaS pages where you can A, get a lot of additional information, and B, also download and buy the software.
That's great. Well, and this question actually piggybacks off your last one. Says, does this mean that LeanFT is not covered in the existing licenses? This individual, they are on version 12.x, and they would like to, I think they're looking to see if they have LeanFT functionality moving forward.
So regarding the name changes that I started the presentation with, license-wise and key, the actual keys that you have, there isn't really anything that you need to do, meaning that the keys that you have will continue to work in version 14, and just in the surface, you will be basically starting to be known as customers that have either a UFT Pro, if you bought the LeanFT standalone, or if you had UFT, it will mean that moving forward that you have the UFT Enterprise. So it's, again, it's a more of a artificial kind of name change that will occur for all the new purchase, but also if you already have those, you will be basically named from now on according to the new additions that I shared in the beginning. But you don't need to really do anything and to go to the entitlement system and get new license keys. Again, what you have is actually what will be continued to be delivered in the future.
Cool. And I'll actually give a quick 30-second on myself. I have traditionally would be considered UFT, it came with LeanFT, and I upgraded to 14 just 2 days ago and was able to get my LeanFT and my UFT with my license, and again with no changes. So I can attest that that does indeed work.
Excellent.
Our next question is asking, is LeanFT available free? If we pay for it, what advantages do we have over Selenium?
So LeanFT is not available for free besides the 60-day evaluation period. And you will need either to buy a term license. We have it for 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. And by the way, the prices are quite cheap. You can, it's only depending on how you consider cheap, but you can have LeanFT for less than $100 per month. This is the price for the LeanFT seat license, and you also have the perpetual model, like most of you, I guess, are using. So these are the prices, and if you want more information, go, as I mentioned, to the SaaS pages where LeanFT is offered, and you can do the actual procurement directly on the SaaS portal. Regarding the second question, which is the value that LeanFT provides on top of Selenium, so here we need to divide whether you want to use the LeanFT for Selenium, which is kind of an embracement or enhancing the Selenium workplace to give you some of the capabilities that LeanFT has to offer, comparing to the LeanFT native kind of support, where we have the full breadth of tool set and capabilities that we can offer. Of course, this delta will continue to shrink. As I mentioned, some of the capabilities that LeanFT has today will be offered also in the LeanFT for Selenium in the future, like what I mentioned, application models and the reporting and more. But for today, again, and let's assume the question was only on the LeanFT for Selenium, if I need to select what are the three main value contributors that we are providing with this first version of LeanFT for Selenium, I would start by saying a more robust test creation that you can achieve by using either the additional locators that we are providing, and also the ability to really recognize how each object is being identified to make sure that this is really a unique identification without running the test. Just by using the OIC that you are familiar, you are able to highlight exactly how many instances can be found by each specific selection that you are doing according to the attributes that are associated to each object. So these two things help you to create a much more robust test to begin with. Second thing is regarding the utilities that we are providing. So a few examples of these utilities can be if you want, while you're executing the test, to highlight a specific object while the test is being run. This is very useful for debugging purposes. Or if you want to take snapshots of either the full screen or specific areas in the screen, specific objects, very useful for auditing kind of purposes, because these snapshots can be later on print in the screen or print as part of the report. So we can actually provide you the screenshots as part of whatever you prefer, as one of the APIs that we basically introduce to the LeanFT for Selenium. So these are just two examples of the benefits. There are much more than that. I really encourage you to read the blog post that is part of the LeanFT for Selenium slide that I provided, that is going to be provided as part of this presentation. And as I mentioned, this is only the first step for us in this exciting journey.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Amir, for taking that question. We had a question come in for Andrew, and I'd like to jump over to that. Andrew, it's asking you, how difficult was it to set up your non-browser testing?
Okay, so I think that Andrew's probably asking about testing the Java applet, which is embedded within the web browser. So that's only Java testing that we do. But yeah, it was really as easy as testing the web browser objects themselves. So we continue to use the object spy to identify objects in the Java applet. And in the case of the use of the Java applet, we actually auto-generate code off of the object spy, which retrospectively, I think it would be better to use the application model, and the application model is much better to use, easier to debug. But yeah, I don't see that it's much more difficult to use LeanFT with the Java applet than it is with the web objects themselves.
Very cool. Next question we have in, and I'm not sure if this is more for Andrew or Aviad. It's asking, if you execute automated tests from Jenkins, can you export the test results into test management tools such as ALM Octane or Quality Center, or do you need to go to Jenkins to see the test results?
Well, from our perspective, we've not attempted to do anything other than to produce the results and the test reports. I mean, you can go into Jenkins and look at the results in Jenkins and analyze all the test data that you need in Jenkins as well, so you can get the Cucumber results and the console output. But yeah, we haven't tried to do it other than generating the test results report.
All right, thank you, Andrew. We're coming up after 10 after the hour, so let's try to hit one last question. I know there's a bunch more questions out there, and we'll see if the team can answer them either offline or sometimes we answer in blog posts, and we'll see what we can do here. Let me just snag one last question. Sorry, I have to find it in here. This one here is asking about that Uft Runtime Engine that was mentioned, and maybe like a quick statement on that and how one attains that that engine, maybe both Uft and LeanFT Runtime Engine.
Right. So the name stands for itself. So the runtime engine is something that we trimmed out of the Uft binaries. So we did kind of a heart surgery, and we took only the code that is relevant for the execution of Uft. And as I mentioned, in version 14, we also made sure that it will work on the LeanFT execution side of the house. So by buying this lower price package, you're getting a linear installation that you can deploy wherever you want, and then to connect to it and use it as the remote host, for example, that only does the execution of your test. And again, the same engine can work on both Uft test execution and also LeanFT one. If you need more information regarding the pricing, either contact your HPE sales rep, or it is also offered in the SaaS portal. So you're more than welcome also to buy term licenses for this runtime engine license.
Outstanding. Thank you. At that, 12 after the hour, I think we'll wrap it up. Once we close up, there will be a short survey and an opt-in to receive more information from HPE about this and other related products. So we'd like to thank you from HPE and from Vivit for attending this session on building a continuous testing pipeline using HPE LeanFT. Again, quick reminder that this recording of the presentation, along with all this great chat, is available on the Vivit website shortly after this session. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amir, Andrew, and Aviad for presenting today, and for all of our attendees. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. Bye, guys.
Thank you.